when we weren't producing any CO2. So, in other words, there are scientific linkages here. When we take into account things that we didn't know about before, but that turn out to be true and significant. Gee, I sound like a preacher. I'm sorry, but it's an important lesson. Global warming isn't just a concept. It could affect us all. And we also, a little fact, everybody talks about CO2. The most important greenhouse gas is water vapor, not CO2. There's a lot more of it, and it has a larger impact. And it's much harder to predict, incidentally. It's complicated. That's unfortunately the way things are. So there are lessons to be learned in these border areas, if you will. And Kathy did a wonderful chapter about a Russian woman who could sort of see what was going on inside of people. And she was supposed to be tested scientifically by people who weren't scientific at all but had access to grind. It's a very sad tale. We're being denied the assistance of people who are sensitive. That a good word, Kathy? I think sensitive is right. To things that the rest of us aren't so sensitive to.
You mean like she was maybe a medical intuitive?
Yes, she was.
You mean like me?
That's true.
And Stan, I know this isn't that. You know that this is an area that is near and dear to my heart. That's why I'm like, okay, we got to talk about all the alternative stuff. So, Kathleen, talk to me.
Well, her name is Natasha Demkina. She's a young Russian girl. She's in her, I'd say, probably in her 20s now, and she came to my attention actually when I saw her story on a television program. It was on the Discovery Channel in 2004. Now, I have read that anyone from the United States couldn't possibly have seen this program because it didn't air in the United States. I saw this program, so maybe my husband and I were on vacation in another country at that time. But what I saw was this young, very gifted Russian girl who was performing, going through a number of different experiments to show that she was successful as a medical intuitive. She was brought to the United States and was taking part in these experiments allegedly by some of the top scientists around the world. Actually, they were members from what is now called the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry. Two of them did have PhDs in psychology, but she failed. And I felt so bad for her seeing this program. She was crying at the end. She was saying that they had been unfair to her, that there were problems with their experiments, that she had never had this result before. And she wanted so badly to show that she really did have this ability, and she was well known for this in Russia and had passed other scientific tests demonstrating that she did have this ability. So when I started to think about writing a chapter for this book, I decided that I wanted to research what happened to her. What was the outcome of all of this? And what I discovered was a wealth of information about what had happened to her, that this committee who designed this experiment had created an environment in which she would fail. She had jet lag. She normally read one individual at a time, but they created protocols where she would have to read several people who were seated very close to each other all at the same time. I found out that some of the people had the same problem, but that she was asked to decide which one of those people had the problem, that there were all sorts of things going on. But I think the worst thing that happened was that the bar was raised so that international statistical standards were not adhered to. She was tricked into signing a contract. She didn't have a lawyer. Here she is, just a teenage girl from Russia. She was tricked into signing a contract that would raise the bar on what would be a passing grade on this experiment. By international statistical standards, she passed the test. But it was announced on television by this experimental team that she had failed. And in the end, there was an outcry from a number of different highly respected scientists from around the world. And Brian Josephson, PhD, was one of them. He won the Nobel Prize, a physicist, and he went to her defense, along with Victor Zammit, who is an internationally known lawyer. And there was a huge outcry about how she was mistreated.
There's the music, but we're going to come back to the story because I have a question, or commentary at least, about this story because, as I said, it's one near and dear to my heart. I'm Dr. Rita Louise. We're here talking to Stanton Friedman and Kathleen Mardon about their new book, Science Was Wrong, and we're going to be back with the Mind Yoga question after these words from our sponsors.
Just Energy Radio with your host, Dr. Rita Louise, will return right after these messages. And now back to Just Energy Radio with Dr. Rita Louise.
Hello and welcome back to Just Energy Radio. I'm Dr. Rita Louise, and we're going to get back to our conversation about science was wrong, but I hear the music, and I think it's time for this week's Mind Yoga question. So here's the question of the week. On November 5th, 1975, this man, part of a 7-man logging crew working on a forested mountain region of Arizona, encountered a strange glowing object which resulted in an incident that has become recognized as the best documented case of alien abduction ever recorded. So, if you know who this person is, who the famous alien abductee is, please send an email to justenergyradio@yahoo.com. The person who answers the question first is going to win a copy of What on Earth? Inside the Crop Circle Mystery. And it's really a good documentary that talks about crop circles. And we actually did a show about this. And so it's What on Earth? The Crop Circle Mystery. It's a 1 DVD? It's 1 DVD. So anyway, if you know the answer to the question, send it to justenergyradio@yahoo.com. If you're listening to the show in the archive, we have had winners who have emailed in with the correct answer after the show has aired live. So please don't, make it that, just send the question in because you never know, you might be the winner like that. So Kathleen, before the break, we were talking about Natasha. And listening to you talk about this test, working as a medical intuitive, I can only empathize with her and that testing criteria. Because, when you're in that intuitive place, you have your methodology, the things that you look at, external stuff can influence you. Having a room full of people watching you is like, if you're nervous, I'm sorry, it just don't work. It just, and so
and
I can
all
empathize.
Of the things that influence your accuracy on that. She was presented with a hostile environment.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine yourself, a